I've long felt that time travel movies are oddly suited best for the comedy genre. That said, some horror slasher movies, like Happy Death Day, manage to be able to combine elements of a slasher and time travel and make a pretty good movie. In 2024, the movie Timecut was released, and while my expectations weren't exactly high for this movie, it really struggled in a number of ways. The film suffers from multiple plot holes, almost no tension at all, a lead actress who looks overwhelmed and confused for most of the movie, and also a villain who, dare I say, isn't the least bit intimidating. This movie has a ton of flaws, probably too many to mention for this review. Now, probably my biggest gripe with this movie is the storyline and the writing in of itself. Questions that we need answers to, we don't get them, while questions we don't need answers to, they're explained to us like we're a bunch of kindergartners. For example, in the movie, the question of how did this time machine in 2024 just randomly end up in a barn? It's not answered at all. Now, I suppose the explanation is that Quinn left it in there maybe, or perhaps Madison's dad, but this is never answered in the movie. Now, at the same time, there's this revolving theme around the dangers of time travel, and this is explained to us as if we're a bunch of idiots during the film. It's posed multiple times. In fact, the audience, though we know it, we've seen Back to the Future, we've seen a lot of these time travel movies, we know the dangers of it. Usually in movies like this, we can at least rely upon a good killer, some good kill scenes, but we didn't even get those in this movie. They were mostly terrible, and really there was only one halfway decent one. That was the one at the mall. Now when Emmy, who is saved on the ship, she's supposed to be the second one who gets killed, there was really an opportunity here for the writers. Lead character Madison had known when the killer was going to kill, where they were going to happen, but this altering should have allowed for a surprise attack, for lack of a better term, by the sweetly slashy killer. But the writers completely squandered this and didn't write anything else in the movie around it. Speaking of sweetly slashy, having a time-traveling Quinn end up being the killer, it was just completely confusing. Was it a surprise? I'll have to admit, sure it was, but an older Quinn as the killer doesn't add up. The writers try to justify it, that his motivation came from all this bullying that happened to him in high school, but he really doesn't even seem that upset or angry during this movie. But are we just supposed to go with that? It looks like they were just forced to kind of pick someone at the end, and this was definitely a bad choice. Now, one of the better things, or at least one positive in this movie, a good dilemma I thought the writers brought up, was the conundrum that Madison was in. If she saves her sister Summer's life, then essentially Madison is never going to be born. It's a really interesting dilemma and conflict that the movie poses, but unfortunately they just squander it like a lot of other things in this movie. They rush through the fact, they don't portray it. It doesn't unwind in a natural fashion. And at first Madison doesn't want to save her sister, but then she just kind of quickly changes her mind. It's kind of rushed through, and I think this actually happened in one afternoon in the movie. Clunkiness was definitely one of the main issues with this film in general, though. The acting was pretty subpar, and lead character Madison, who did pretty good on the Outer Banks, I thought she just looked out of place. She looks confused and overwhelmed a lot during this movie. Generally, I had the sense that it looked like she didn't want to be there a lot of times. Now, another massive weakness in this film is around the antimatter. In the movie, two high school students, Madison and Quinn, they break into the facility around where the antimatter is held. Now, I can assure you that facilities that hold antimatter, just because you have someone else's badge, you're not going to be able to go in. Those things are top secret, and there's simply no way that two high school kids, or really anyone, even professionals, would be able to break into a facility like that. That's like trying to say you'd be able to break into something like Fort Knox. So essentially, Madison and Quinn are able to go in, get a canister of the antimatter, break out. And it's also a little bit ridiculous, too, that they're able to reverse engineer the time machine and discover that that's what they need. But again, they needed that to make the movie work. And that was kind of a theme overall. A lot of the writing was choppy, and it felt like times they rushed certain things. And then at other times, they didn't cover things well enough. So the movie did not flow very well. It felt like a lot of the writing was forced overall. And I would just say I didn't think this was a very good movie, even though I didn't have the best expectations for it.